Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Good Monday, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We are here today to talk about when it all begins.
When does it begin?
This is a frequently asked question in my life. When I speak with people about following the interests of children, well, at what age can I start doing that? Or, we need to start to lay the foundation for future literacy, future math, future socialization. So, well, when do we start with this? Or when do we start with that? Or when? And I'm going to put the notion out there that it all starts in infancy.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, people think 3 years old is some magic age, right? We're in the 3 to 5 year old age group now, so we can start to do all these things. But no, actually, it starts before then. By saying, we're in the 3 to 5 year old age group now, so we can start to do a lot of things. Well, yeah, their skills have progressed to a certain point, especially if they're typically developing. But we were building to that from infancy. There's not we've walked in now to the 3 to 5 year old classrooms.
And we'll turn the switch on and be done.
Flip the switch. It's all good now. Young infants, when they can turn their heads, will turn their head to a preferred adult at very young ages. They start to show preferences. Think about it. If you've ever been around an infant, they start to show preferences from a really young age, even just by where they look.
Yeah.
When people say, I'm so glad to be teaching the threes this year, or I'm so glad my child's turning 3 because now I can really follow their interests. What that statement actually means is before that birthday, people may not have been watching closely enough, observing the children closely enough to figure out before they can talk in these little sentences that they're talking in now, they still were showing preference and they were showing us their interests and they were building pre-literacy skills and pre-math skills and doing all these things through the actions and interactions that they were able to take at that age.
Right.
Children as young as 6 months old will be able to, through their actions, show you their preferred activities, their preferred toys, their preferred, right? They start to grasp onto things even younger as their preferred comfort item or their comfort person. So they are showing their interests all along. It's a matter of the adults doing 2 things, I think. Being in tune to what they're doing and remembering it isn't about what interests me. It's about what this child is reaching for, looking at, asking for by reaching for it. Yes. I've had young infants, and I'm sure you all have too, young infants where when a particular adult walks in the room, they start to reach for that person.
Yes.
That is one of their first preferences, people. Right? Who do you
They're
prefer?
also choosing, there are infants that will walk into a room and instantly go to a certain section of their room because their favorite toys are there every single time. You know what I mean? Every time, because that's what they prefer. They prefer to play with those type of toys, and they know they do.
Scoot their little bodies over to the empty box to play with it.
Yes.
That child who's incessantly banging the rattle on the table and making all the adults anxious around them from all that banging, that child is saying to you, I'm interested in sound. I'm interested in cause and effect.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the fact that every time I do this, the same result happens.
Yes. And
again,
I feel as an adult, you should be how can I foster that?
Right.
Instead of being here oh my God, that's too noisy. Please stop. how can I foster? Because now you're into like what I prefer. I prefer quiet. You don't care what the infants prefer. I prefer quiet. So I'm going to take this rattle away is not the right thing. You should be like, how can I foster this in this child?
I prefer quiet is not a far leap from, watch this, ready? It's not a far leap from, I know the children are really interested in containers and boxes, but I'm far more interested in talking about the circus.
Yes.
Not a far leap.
Not far. Yes. Yes. And I know there's a lot of adults who just do this to their children, that their interests have to be the adult interests have to be the children's interests instead of just following what the children want to do. And a lot of parents do that, a lot of teachers do that, a lot of adults do that for whatever the reason. I'm not sure really, but
children learn more when they're interested. So do all of you. We can follow their lead from the time they are extremely young.
Mm-hmm.
But the same is true for skills, right? Skills, we don't flip the skill switch in the 3 to 5-year-old classes. Skills are being built from at least the time children are born. There are some studies that say that. In utero,
yeah.
Skills are being built. The brain is developing. When people say things like, "Oh, my child can learn this now," as if no learning about it took place before, as if that switch has been flipped, we're not really paying attention to the foundational things that lead to that.
And I do feel there's a large amount of people who think that no learning is going on in infancy. Oh, they're just infants. They just sit there. They don't do anything. No. But there's so much brain development going on at that age. And that's why I think when they're 3 and they're capable of talking and walking and doing all the stuff that people thought from age birth through age 3 that nothing was happening, that it was like basically we're just following their needs and that's it. When really there's so much brain development going on there.
It's really about myth busting. There used to be a belief, and there are articles about this, right? In the past, people believed that college students' brains worked much harder than an infant's brain, and that's untrue. The most rapid brain development takes place between birth and 2 years old. That's the most rapid time, most changes. When you think about the difference between a 2-month-old and a 6-month-old, there's much bigger difference than between a 4-year-old and a 4.5-year-old, because by the time the child is like even entering the 3 to 5-year-old age bracket, the brain development has begun to slow down, right? So the brain development begins to slow down. The young children before the age of 3 encounter so many new things all the time. And they're taking in so much information that the brain is very highly active. The windows for learning that Dr. Pam Schiller calls the windows are wide open to learning so many things. And even though they may not be able to communicate with you through language, we can watch what they're doing, check out their actions, offer them opportunities that will lay the foundation for the future. Cause and effect is a foundation for all future learning. When you think about literacy and our discussions about books in the future, and our discussions about and help for children's writing in the future, math, cause and effect has to do with science and math and all of the things they're going to do.
All of it.
Right? The arts, doing visual art, doing it's all cause and effect based. So that young child who's banging the rattle against the table is laying the foundation for future skills like literacy, math, science, art. That's the beginning.
It's the beginning. Yes.
The starting point, as we said in the title.
Yes.
The starting point is birth, or maybe a little before.
A little before. Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I'll say to people when they say the child can't do this, and I'm always like, well, what can the child do? Because the child is somewhere in the continuum of learning things.
Yeah.
those actions that take place when they're really young lead to future actions. And for some reason, I feel like we know that about 3 to 5-year-olds. There's lots of conversation about how this is going to lead to the child being able to write stories and read books.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, again, it doesn't magically start when the child walks
It's-
into the threes class.
Yeah, because I feel like when the child walks into the threes class, there's this big like, oh, we got to prepare them for kindergarten. We got to prepare them for kindergarten. What do they do in kindergarten? They write stories and they read books. But like, really, why aren't we taking these children who are born, these little babies, and say, okay, we got to prepare them for that 3-year-old classroom? You know what I mean? Like, why are we just like, no learning's happening there? Just forget that. Learning is like, why?
Okay. But I've also seen the opposite. I've seen the opposite where people will take infants or mobile infants and try and sit them in a large group time because they're going to have to do that when they're 3.
Because they're going to
and
have
that doesn't work.
I'm not saying
that.
I'm not condoning that. I'm just saying, that doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
I've seen that too. Yeah.
We have to do things in a developmentally appropriate age for each age group, understanding that everything we do with them is on the path to the future.
Yeah, everything matters. It's all building. It's a big building block.
Right, but
you don't just get to be 3 and suddenly be able to do math. Right. It's like you've been learning math since the time you were born. You just don't realize that it's math. Okay, yeah.
An infant, mobile infant, toddler, it's not developmentally appropriate to think that they're going to sit in a large group or circle time and really pay attention to what's happening. It's just not, their brain development isn't there yet. How do I think about that starting point though? I think about it in more one-to-one and small group interactions. What does it take to sit in that large group time when they're older and more capable of doing that? It takes an attention span. So, and the ability to self-regulate their emotions in their bodies. So what am I doing when they're really, really young? I'm sitting one-on-one with them, or I have them one-on-one on a changing table, and I'm talking with them to keep their attention. I'm sitting with them and manipulating some kind of object or toys and seeing, is this child attending to this task at all, and for how long? And we can't expect long, but just those building blocks of let's do a task together. I'm going to talk to you while you're on the changing table. I'm going to
grabbing them when you have their
attention.
Grab their attention while you have it, while they're interested in what you are doing. If you see that a child is like clapping their hands, you might go over and sing a song that has clapping in their hands. You know what I mean? Because you grab them while they were interested in doing that. It's the same thing you would do with 3-year-olds. If you're interested in trucks, hey, let's do trucks. Let's learn about trucks. It's the same thing. It's just on an infant scale.
Provided we know that at 3 years old, if the child is interested in trucks, then I can teach them far more content areas and skills and all that and domains of learning based on trucks because they're interested in it. And again, that's not, it doesn't just take place there. The young child who's interested in banging the rattle, I might offer that child other things with cause and effect so the child can experiment with it. I might offer that child other ways to make noise so the child can experiment with it and really watch and see what is it that's capturing your interest so that we can start to make those brain connections and lay that foundation for the future. But I'm not going to do it in a way that's not developmentally appropriate. And that's really the key, right? Yeah. I'm going to do it in a way that's developmentally appropriate. And I'm going to understand that there is this continuum. Sometimes people will say, well, something like, I don't know, doing base 10 in math starts at a certain age. Well, you know how that can start? Because we have laid foundational math lessons from birth forward. And from birth, that child is, again, I'm going to use the changing table because I feel like people don't communicate with the child enough on the changing table. But the child's on the changing table and the child is kicking and I'm acknowledging that, and we're going to count their feet and we're going to count their little toes, and that's the beginning of base 10.
Base 10. Yes.
Right. Or even the one-to-one correspondence in infancy to say, I have to change your diaper. Here's one diaper. You want to hold it? That's the beginning of doing the higher order math, the higher level math, and higher order thinking. When we're thinking about following the interests of children, again, from the time they're really young, the child goes over to the climbing area in that mobile infant room. Okay, Let's have some conversation around what you're doing so that I can support your growth of language, and communication skills, socialization skills. And I sort of, I guess, along these lines, I really wish the world placed more value on the staff who work with infants and toddlers and their education.
Yes. And their education. Yes. Yes.
Which may be, I don't know, an episode for the future, but I'm just saying we don't, in our society, in our culture, traditionally place enough value on educated or educating infant toddler people. Do you know how many infant toddler people who may attend a professional development session focused on them say things like, oh, thank goodness,
okay.
because nothing I attend is about me.
Is
All
about
of the
infants.
professional
Yeah.
development is for 3 to 5 year olds.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, where Allison and I happen to be, there's an infant toddler credential. The Council for Professional Recognition, who puts out the CDA, the Child Development Associate credential, has an infant toddler credential. But I don't think that traditionally there's been enough just kind of ongoing professional development aimed at infant toddler teachers.
Yeah, there's not. It seems like it's like we're saying, like people don't think that that's an important time, and that it's so
It's
sad
the
that
most important
I know,
time.
but like look at this, like there's no professional development towards it either. It's like not thought of as an important time, even in our own field, which is so sad.
It is. I think that there's some professional development, but like I said, not nearly enough. And they often tell me, they often tell me how they attend professional development all the time that either doesn't apply to them or isn't spoken about in a way they can apply it. I'll go with either one. You know, when you say, here's how we would do this in a 3 to 5 year old classroom, something like a visual schedule. Oh, and I'll show a slide and say, by the way, if you're working with infants and toddlers, you can start with now and next. You see them madly writing this down, any tidbit they can get.
Any little morsel of information. Because they're not getting enough and they need it. They want to learn too.
And when does it all start, folks? What's the starting point? The starting point is infancy for everything. And it's another reason why the 3 to 5 year old teachers need to understand the goals and objectives for children younger than the ones they're teaching so that they understand where they've been. What are the skills that these children have developed before they knew me? And how do I take that and build on it? We shouldn't come from out of nowhere with, we're going to teach you this thing. It needs to build on the skills you already have, and those skills start very young. So if you're teaching, let's say, the 3s, or your child has turned 3, you need to think about what were the milestones up to this point? What were the objectives up to this point? How do I take that ability and build on it rather than come from outer space with some new information or skill, not connected to what they've already done? Which really for me was like high school chemistry, not connected to anything I'd ever done or will do. I can't ever again. And I can't tell you a thing about it today, even though I got, I think, an A in that class, right? We don't want that. We don't want disconnected information. So we have to understand what's happening with infants, mobile infants, toddlers, 2s, 3s, pre-K, kindergarten. We have to understand where have they been, where are they going, how do I create the connections? I really would love to get people who teach 3 to 5 year olds in infant toddler professional development. I bet there's a lot they will not have realized about the development of infants and toddlers. Right. And that, no, it doesn't magically start when the children are more able to communicate with you. It's really not about you. It's about that. No, it's not about me understanding them, which, by the way, is a beautiful thing. And I love that I can understand them as they get older.
But I feel like you can understand them before that too, if you're really in tune.
If you're in tune, if you're watching, if you're observing. And again, if you put aside your desperate need to introduce the things that matter to you, follow the interests of the children and see if you connect new things to that.
Right.
Okay, we're going to leave you all with that notion. The starting point is the start. It's at the start. I hope this inspires people to learn more about the development of children when they're very young.
I hope so too.
Mhm.
So much brain development. So much.
Yes. And so many connections to their future.
Mhm.
Okay, folks, we're going to catch you next time on the podcast.
All right. Bye, peeps.
Bye.